to welcome everybody. I'm Catherine Nagel, the Executive Director of the City Parks Alliance. And we are so thrilled to see such a great turnout, and thank you for your interest in learning more about Greater and Greener 2026. We had about 28 cities who registered to listen in on this webinar, which really shows how the urban parks movement is growing. And as you know, we've issued an RFP for the conference that will take place in June of 2026, which will actually be the 7th Greater and Greener we've held since 2012, when we were in New York for the first one. And host cities have included, in addition to New York, San Francisco, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Denver. And we hope all of you will be with us this year for Greater and Greener in Philadelphia from June 18th to 21st to see how the conference works. And of course, experience a great park city. And then we'll be in Seattle in June of 2024. As many of you know, Greater and Greener is not your typical conference. It's unique in that we work to tell the local story as well as to provide a platform for voices from around the country and the world through interactive learning opportunities with more time spent outdoors than indoors. So the city itself becomes the classroom. And over the course of our planning, City Parks Alliance works closely with the local host team to co-create an exceptional experience. And we hope that the result strengthens support for parks locally, as well as nationally and internationally. We've got a great lineup of speakers today, and they're going to be covering a number of topics, including why host. So we'll hear from folks who've actually hosted the conference in the past. You'll learn what we're looking for through our selection of the host city and a little bit more about local programming. We'll have an overview of local meeting needs. We'll give you an opportunity to ask questions of us, and then we'll remind you about some upcoming deadlines. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to two great park leaders, Happy Haynes, Executive Director of Denver Parks and Recreation, and Ellen Stewart, Senior Landscape Architect for St. Paul Parks and Recreation, both of whom were involved deeply in the former Greater and Greeners in their cities. I want to take it away, Happy.
Ellen, you want to start? Or do you want me to start? It's up to you, Catherine.
You go ahead, Happy.
Is there an order? Okay, let me start as the most recent host, and really I'll start out by saying that a large part of what inspired us were the experiences that we had in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and in New York, and in some of the prior Greater and Greener locations. And I'm going to outline for you sort of 3 or 4 really important, I think, values that made it really compelling for us to step up as a host. First, I will say, and for a lack of better terms, the sort of the under the umbrella of bragging rights, right? The being considering your city and your park system in the company of other great cities and other great park systems and folks who are doing cutting edge work and leading the way is, I think, was an important part of why we wanted to do this. It's an opportunity to showcase your park system, and again, in that great company. It's an important one outside of our parks organization to showcase your city. And I think more and more importantly, as we've discovered even in these past couple of years during the pandemic, that the important role that parks play in the quality of life and in the overall infrastructure and vitality of a city is so essential that that's an important part of the consideration. Demonstrating the unique character and the things that we've got going for us in the city of Denver, and being able to share that across the country is, I think, a really important motivator. The second thing, and this is where my staff got sick and tired of me talking about it. This is a lab, if you will, a laboratory. We're bringing the practitioners, the best minds, the folks who are on the ground every day doing this work, the people who are planning the work, the consultants and the academics, and all of the folks who do parks and open space and resiliency and all of these related topics. My little shortcut for all that work is city building. Like, we are integral parts of building cities that are lively, healthy, safe, and sustainable. And parks play a critical role in that. And so it's the opportunity to bring that, literally that national, international think tank to your city, and in a very applied way, be able to look at what you're doing, your facilities, your programs, your practices, your policies, and get that, that inner exchange of ideas. And so for me, that was my selfish motive. I wanted to learn as much as I could from everybody else, from these amazing cities who are doing the work and who, maybe have similar or different challenges, and who bring different perspectives and who bring different expertise and help us think through it. So, without me having to quadruple my consultant budget, Greater and Greener helped me create that environment where I've got all of these experts, and I think that's one of the tremendous advantages. The final thing is sort of on a local level. Again, around the notion of parks are so important to city build. And I imagine many cities have struggled, like we have in Denver, with sort of convincing people that parks aren't nice to haves, like parks are essential. And, we're beginning to build that momentum and that culture in our cities across the country that it's essential. And the role that we play in, from environmentally and health and economics and just quality of life, mental health, all of those things, we're key players, and it's important. And I think we're still in our early stages of really inculcating all of our city cultures with that notion and behaving that way. And so it was an opportunity for us to engage our local partners, people who we wanted to be able to see our park system as that role, as a major part of our city's infrastructure, and a major player, and people who fund us, and people who we want to create greater stewardship of our parks and our open spaces, and to bring them to the table so that they heard not just from us, because they hear from us all the time, we're always, preaching, but to be able to see our peer cities across the country and learn from them and get, aha, now I get, what this means in a local context. And so helping to guide and inform our local people. And then finally, from those of us, when you're so close to something, sometimes you miss, it's like missing the forest for the trees, right? This was an opportunity for us to see our own park system from a very different, from the perspective of all these people coming in, and not the, the day-to-day operations and maintenance and budgeting and all of that. And to be able to, in a way, get to know our own city as somebody maybe from the outside would. And so all of those, I think, were really compelling reasons for us. And I think they paid huge dividends for us since being able to host it. You're on mute, Ellen, and I
I
know
know.
you're
I've never done
you're
that
just
before.
waiting for the day when you don't have to have somebody tell you that.
I don't think it's ever going to happen unless I just quit forgetting. So yeah, this is a great turnout. I didn't expect there to be this many people on the call. I will probably repeat a lot of the things that Happy was saying. And Denver was an incredible experience. It was also really great. It happened after Minneapolis and St. Paul did ours. And I loved being able to enjoy it because there was a lot of stress. I have to admit, there's a lot of stress involved when you are like in it and hosting, but it is an incredible conference, and I'm probably preaching to the choir because I'm guessing most of you have all been to one of these conferences. I've been part of planning other conferences, specifically the American Society of Landscape Architects conferences that are focused on the profession of landscape architecture, but having a conference that's focused on parks and having people do that are all over the place and what they do for parks and within the department was great. So making connections and developing relationships within our division. So I would say that like from planning through the actual event was it was all really great, and planning it was incredible. We were working also with Minneapolis, as I was saying. So we had to venture to the other side of the river to have some meetings and connect with people over there. And it was, it's inspiring both to see things that were happening or are happening in our own group or our own agency, but then also to put things together with what's happening on the other side of the river. Was fun because it's like there were definitely things that we are doing that are similar. There are definitely things that we are doing differently. And so learning about some of those things was incredible. So I would say that just the ability to really reflect and even learn more about what our own city is doing right now when it comes to parks, when it comes to how we're serving people and what we're doing environmentally, what kind of classes that we're offering, all the support systems that we offer. I don't know that we have ever taken the time to just look at that as a whole and kind of come together on what our mission is. But then it's also really awesome to be able to see what other cities are doing. And we were able to see that like during this planning process, attending other conferences in other cities is awesome as well. It's a really great way to see it. But I feel like I was unique here to be able to do that with another city. I would also say that there was some competition happening, which I wouldn't suggest is necessary, but it was really fun. But taking the opportunity and looking at our work as a whole and appreciating what each division is doing was really inspiring, and seeing how people are using our system. Putting together the tours specifically was quite there was quite a bit of creativity that we put into it. And I think that was something that people really all came together on, like what's the best way to show off our city, and to all the, what's the best way to show people in 3 days what we're doing, and to showcase our parks and our system overall. So there is definitely like the bragging part of it, I would say, Happy, but even more than that, it was the part of just really coming together around what we do, both within our city and the 2 cities that were putting it together that year, but also being at this conference and just learning so much about other cities and what they're doing, and having people ask questions during these tours, and thinking about it in a different way. It was just an incredible experience. So that is what I would say.
Great. Well, thank you to you both. And as you mentioned, it's an extraordinary commitment by the host cities, and, bringing in all of your staff and partners. And we still draw on what we learned in both places. So thank you for sharing this information today, and for the wonderful hosting that you've done for Greater and Greener in past years. I'd like to turn it now over to Gideon Berger, who is City Parks Alliance's program director, who will delve a little more deeply into what that local programming actually means.
Thanks so much, Catherine. as Catherine said, I came on board as program director for City Parks Alliance this fall, so a good ways into the planning for this conference. But having worked at other membership organizations with large conferences in the past, like the Urban Land Institute and National League of Cities, I can tell you it's a very similar process, and it's also a highly collaborative one. I think one of the most collaborative ones of any membership organization that I've worked for or been a member of. And the curation of the program for the conference is really a partnership between City Parks Alliance staff, our board, in particular, our conference and research committee of our board, and the local host committee. And there's probably a fourth leg of that partnership too, which is all of the incredible people who propose sessions to speak at the conference. And we have an RFP process for soliciting incredible ideas from members and non-members, from everyone all over the country and internationally as well. And that gives us a tremendous amount of material to sort through. It was incredibly difficult to curate that this year because we had just incredible ideas and great speakers from all over the world, really. And that's why it takes a real partnership to put that program together. And we really, I can't stress this enough, we really rely a lot on the judgment of our host city and their committee of partners, as well as our leadership in the organization from our board and our conferences committee as well. So with that, I can kind of outline a little bit of what those responsibilities are for everybody. The host committee really has the lead on curating the outdoor part of the conference, the weekend tours and the mobile workshops. And as Catherine was saying, this makes up really more than half of the programming. And as you guys know, before the pandemic, was one of the best reasons to travel to other cities and go to conferences. Anyone in this space knows that you learn so much from visiting other places and seeing things you haven't seen before. So some of those responsibilities are creating and managing either an internal or a group of local partners that you want to work with to create these tours. And in Philadelphia, just to give you a sense of the scale, we have 40, 10 per day. So on the weekend, we have 10 weekend tours, Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday and Tuesday, we have 10 each day of the local workshops. And to give you a little sense of the difference between the two, if you think about the balance between fun and education, for the weekend tours, that balance is really like 80% fun and 20% education. And the mobile workshops are really the inverse. And those are offered for continuing education credit through the state NRPA affiliate, through ASLA and APA as well. So those are responsible for developing agendas for each tour and workshop, doing a dry run to ensure the timing and logistics, and recruiting guides whose bios and photos go on the website. And also the local host committee develops the learning objectives for the mobile workshops to offer professional certification and licensure credits from those three organizations I just mentioned. The local host committee representatives also serve as submission reviewers on our conference and research committee. So they join some of our board members there. They work with CPA staff to review the submissions and recommend the sessions for inclusion in the program from that RFP process. They work with staff to identify themes and place-based linkages between the tours and workshops and other proposal sessions. And they serve on our conference and research committee. They have representatives, which meets monthly, at least in the planning stages, to develop and define the track themes, offer final recommendations for the agenda, and give us, really importantly, referrals for local speakers or moderators that can help fill out our tablet of speakers. We also looked at the host committee as representatives for their judgment. They're advisors. They give us intel on local presenters and exhibitors and help screen for any conflicts or help fill in any holes if we have folks cancel. So it's truly a partnership. It's incredibly fun collaborating with everyone. It's a lot of work, but it leads to a really, really rich and robust conference program.
Great. Thank you so much, Gideon. And now I'd like to turn it over to Frank Acosta, who is the Greater and Greener event coordinator and has worked with us since New York. And he'll give you an overview of the local meeting needs, the nuts and bolts of how we bring this conference to life. Frank?
Thank you, Catherine. That's exactly what I was going to say. I am the nuts and bolts guy. And Obviously, I love what I'm doing because, 4 conferences, I'm still here, right? So, my key role is to help pull it all together. And, we work very closely with our local host partners to highlight all of the aspects of this conference. And the city actually, from site selection for our special receptions and how we help local leaders tell their stories in the weekend tours and mobile workshops that Gideon just mentioned. We also work with the host team to minimize our expenses and keep the event as affordable as possible. So that all falls into a couple of buckets, right? So we work with the host city to make recommendations and help us assist in securing a venue. And that could be a conference center or convention center. It could be a local university or college, or it could be a hotel venue that has a large enough capacity for the various number of breakout sessions and general sessions that we do. And we actually cut back this year with the pandemic, not knowing exactly how many folks would come, and a lot of folks are coming, which is great. But we definitely need a venue that can accommodate multiple concurrent breakout sessions and panels. We also work with you guys to find out about, special events, like what are some great locations that showcase your city where we can host our opening and closing receptions. The opening reception traditionally is on a Sunday night and the closing reception is on a Tuesday night. We'll also work with you on lodging. So we have surpassed over 1,300 room nights in Philadelphia this year. We had a little bit more in Denver, but we're still climbing. We're still asking for rooms. So you can figure like 1,300 rooms over 5 days. And we work with hotels to find affordable lodging, nice lodging. And then, of course, some additional other lodging options that are more affordable. In the past, like in New York, we worked with NYU. We actually had some of our folks stay in dorm rooms, right? They were centrally located, they were on campus, and they were less expensive. I do all the logistics and work with you on, to navigate the city, transportation, catering, local AV companies. We try to source locally to put revenue back into the host city, which is a key thing. So we tend not to bring a lot in from outside. And, local support, partners who could donate goods and services, parking permits, meter hooding, any other in-kind donations that will really elevate the profile of the conference and help us manage our budget. We'll look for a local liaison who could help us cut through some of the red tape and getting some of the, things that have to go through municipal agencies just to make that a little smoother and a little more effective. And then, of course, like I said, local vendors, printing companies and that sort of thing to keep the revenue in the host city. We have an exhibition hall, and we'll work with the local host city to help recruit some really great exhibitors that may be local and they want to have a nationwide or an international presence. So we'll work with you to get those folks, involved into the exhibition hall. For marketing, the local host team will create a promotional video that will be played at the preceding conference. So for example, this year in 2022, we have a promotional video for Seattle in 2024. And then the same thing in 2024 in Seattle, the next city will have a promotional video that the local host team creates. And then finally, and one of the more important things is we'll work with you to solicit volunteers. Volunteers are the backbone of this conference. There are a lot of very important positions that need to be filled, from room monitors to tour leaders and tour assistants. So there are a number of different capacities in which somebody can plug in. And who plugs in are people from the park agencies, friends groups, local universities. A lot of park organizations have park friends groups. So, we look to recruit about 125 to 150 over the conference days. And that's it. I'm seeing a couple of questions here. So the hotel nights, somebody's asking about the approximate number of hotel nights. So the number that I quoted is the total room block. Our hotel nights, our peak nights traditionally have been Sunday and Monday. But what we're seeing now is that a lot of folks are coming in earlier to spend a little more time in the local host city. So we're going to probably look at revising that to make our peak nights Saturday, Sunday, and Monday with Tuesday departures. And then, of course, we always work with the local venue to cover our shoulder nights. Somebody had asked a question, do volunteers receive comp or discounted tickets to attend? So we are revamping our volunteer program. We're going to look at it. In the past, it was very altruistic. People wanted to volunteer just, to get the experience. I will say that there are some volunteer opportunities that actually allow for educational learning. If you're a room monitor, you get to sit in, you have a couple of duties, but basically you're there and you're absorbing the information that's being presented in that session. But we are going to be looking at our volunteer program to expand it to allow for greater access. And that's all the questions I have so far.
All right, thank you, Frank. And now we want to turn it over to all of you that are on the line, and you can ask your questions in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and raise your hand, and we'll call on you. All right, I see Rachel Marr.
Hey, my name is Rachel. I'm curious, and I guess this question is for Frank and Gideon, perhaps, about how many folks. I mean, I heard a lot about how it is a lot of work. There is a lot of collaboration. I'm curious from your partner organizations about how many people would you say that you're working with?
That's a good question. I can take it from the logistics side.
Yeah, and then I'll jump in on the programming side.
Okay, great. So on the logistics side, we've actually done it a couple of ways. In Denver and in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the local host team designated like a main point of contact. So that is who I would work with to see how things were going with the weekend tours or the mobile workshops. In some cities, for example, in Philadelphia, we're working with a local logistics company on the ground. So the local host team works with them on things like the weekend tours and the mobile workshops, because the details of those, it's a big bucket. So that local vendor has been able to assist with that. Some cities have just designated a person. I think some cities have also brought on a person for this particular role. It's a lot of coordination, but we've done it in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I'm just going to put a link in the chat to the current Greater and Greener Conference website that thanks our review teams. On the programming side, just to throw some numbers at you from this particular Greater and Greener, we had about 260 responses to the RFP. When you add in all of our general session speakers, I think we're going to get to about 180 speakers at the conference. I was astonished to say I thought 2/3 of the proposal, maybe 3/4 of the proposals were from amazing to like pretty good. There was very little filler out there. And in terms of the numbers of folks that we work with, our staff team is like 3 of us here. From our board committee, there's about another 8 to 10 folks. And then from the local host committee, we have a few representatives from each of the main organizations. So, for example, in Philadelphia, we have the City of Philadelphia, Fairmount Parks Commission. We have, a few people from each of them. Now they formed their own local group who we've met with, who have really been key in helping to figure out all of those weekend tours and mobile workshops that Frank was alluding to as well. And they have a single point of contact that they work through for us there. So hopefully that helps answer the question in terms of just the size of the amount of people involved.
I noticed that Liz had her hand, and then we can go to Matt Nielsen.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Liz Visa, president of Friends of the Public Garden in Boston. I am curious to talk about the partnership relationship between the city Parks Commissioner and the partners. We have a large and very involved group of park partners here in Boston, but my sense is that it's really important that there be strong commitment, involvement, leadership from the city itself. You know, and we have a Parks Commissioner. Will we have the same Parks Commissioner in 4 years? We don't know. The same Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space, we don't know. So I need to understand more about how important, and I assume it is really important, that the city itself, the Parks Department and Commissioner and all the people that are leading the city on the city side are all in and understand what it takes to do it and will call upon us to support that, but that they are really leading the charge.
Yes, that's right, Liz. You know, we have to have the commitment from the Park and Rec Agency. And, you know, in the case of Philadelphia, we're working with both the agency and their main nonprofit partner, but the city's involvement is critical, you know, and involvement from the mayor's office even. But I maybe would turn it over quickly to both Happy and Ellen to just answer that about how you work closely with your partners over the you know, the long span of planning for this conference.
Thank you. Great.
Ellen, do you want to chime in?
Sure. We're both waiting for the other. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was mostly, I would say, very heavily done by the Parks Departments for both St. Paul and Minneapolis. But a lot of the things that we tried to incorporate assistance with or get some support on, we did go to the partners and ask them and make sure that they were included in some of the tours and things that they wanted to highlight. Also just finding out what kinds of tours. I keep calling everything a tour, but what is the other thing?
Mobile workshop.
Mobile workshop. Thank you. Also making sure that we're highlighting our partners and what we're doing with them in the mobile workshops. But I mean, I would say overall for us, it was the big lift was on the side of the city.
And Happy, you brought together a council. Could you talk?
Yeah,
a little bit
I would agree with what Ellen said. I mean, the leadership around the key items that needed to be addressed, as Frank and Gideon have outlined, needed to be the city, and you know, so in my organization, we had an individual who has since become my chief of staff. There are lingering benefits to greater and greener, and one of those is the leadership this individual really brought to the table in being the point person, like the convener, was that, you know, he has since become you know, my chief of staff. But we had a local organizing host committee that was very much involved in all of the decision making and some of the creative process and everything from, you know, what made best sense from the lodging standpoint, and mobile workshops and themes that would help highlight what was important in Denver. The question about the volunteers and what will we use to make volunteers feel like this is really a worthwhile endeavor, and some things that we want, and themselves generating those volunteers, because it was really important. They were very much involved in helping to literally implement many of the pieces that were in place. But it was, again, you know, my parks team that led all of that, you know, brought all the pieces together and were the primary sort of points of contact with Frank and with Catherine and the Greater and Greeter team as we moved on. And I sense that a lot of that has been true in Philadelphia. I mean, you know, from the sessions to the workshops and so on, the city and the Conservancy, the Fairmount part. I mean, that, you know, they work hand in glove in what's going on there, and are always thinking about how to engage partners. And I mentioned it earlier, getting our partners engaged, particularly for that long-term benefit of increasing our own relationship with our partnerships our partners is really key.
Great, thank you very much.
Great, Matt.
Hi, good afternoon. Matt Nielsen, Chief Operating Officer, Houston Parks Board. For those of us that are coming to Greater and Greener in Philadelphia, will there be an opportunity, provided schedules permit, of course, because you're all running a conference, to just have some informal conversations or discussions about putting our cities forward to talk about 2026? Just making sure we understand what the landscape looks like and don't take you too much away from the duties at hand in Philadelphia. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Matt, right now we don't have anything formally planned, but our staff will confer and get back to you all about that question, because I think that's, I know that
Thank you very much.
we're all super busy, but we want to make sure that we're providing you with a forum to ask questions and get to know us a bit.
Great.
So we'll be back to you on that.
And,
Okay,
and
thank
you
you.
know, Matt, the best way to really just kind of get a sense of the conference and the role that your city might play is to really immerse yourself in the conference. So if you're coming with a couple of folks, right, you all divvy up which mobile workshops and which weekend tours, and then you're going to be in the exhibit hall and you're going to kind of observe. I mean, that honestly is the best informational stream to figure out how this conference works and how it's put together. And then, of course, you know, even if it's post-conference, you know, we're available to answer any questions that you do have. But I say just come with the team and immerse yourself and try different things.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? All right. Now, I know some of this information was included in the RFP. So I encourage you to read that through closely. A couple of upcoming deadlines. Obviously, the deadline for submission of your proposal is August 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we're mindful that we're dealing in different time zones. And then if you do have questions before that, please send those to greatergreener@cityparksalliance.org, and we'll be sure to respond to you. As I mentioned, we will be getting back to everybody about, you know, opportunities. If we create something a little more formal at Greater and Greener, you know, there will be representatives from the cities who have hosted, in addition to Denver and St. Paul, at the conference. And so we can always connect you with folks who've had the wonderful experience of working with us on Greater and Greener. So with that, again, just many thanks for your interest, and we're very excited to see what cities put forward, and thank you for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.